I want you to imagine two people standing at the exact same place in life. Same age, same city, same opportunities, same amount of time in a day. One of them wakes up 10 years later living a life of purpose, growth, confidence, financial stability, and freedom. The other wakes up 10 years later frustrated, confused, disappointed, wondering where all the years went. Now here is the shocking truth. The difference was not intelligence. The difference was not talent. The difference was not luck. The difference was that one person designed the future and the other allowed circumstances to design it for them. Let me tell you something. Whether you make a plan or not, your future is still being created every single day, every choice, every habit, every conversation, every excuse, every discipline, every distraction. Something is building your future right now. The only question is, are you building it consciously? Or is life building it accidentally? Think about that for a moment. Most people spend more time planning a weekend than planning the next 5 years of their lives. They spend hours choosing a movie, whores scrolling through social media, whores discussing other people's success, but almost no time asking themselves the most important question: who am I becoming? Not what am I getting? Not what am I buying? Not what am I earning? Who am I becoming? Because success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by becoming a certain kind of person. I learned something years ago. Life rarely gives you what you want. Life usually gives you what you deserve. And what you deserve is often determined by the person you have become. That's why personal development changes everything. Because when you change yourself, everything around you begins to change. Your opportunities change. Your confidence changes, your relationships change, your income changes, your standards change, your future changes. But here's what most people don't understand. The future is not created in years. The future is created in days. A year is simply a collection of days. A decade is simply a collection of years. And your destiny is simply a collection of decisions. That's all it is. Small decisions, repeated consistently. Imagine a plane leaving Los Angeles for New York. If the pilot changes direction by only a few degrees, just a few degrees, the plane ends up hundreds of miles away from its intended destination. The same thing happens in your life. A few degrees of discipline, a few degrees of learning, a few degrees of improvement, a few degrees of intentional living. And 5 years later, your life looks completely different. The problem is that most people underestimate small changes because they cannot see immediate results. They want dramatic transformation overnight. They want confidence tomorrow, wealth tomorrow, successes tomorrow, recognition tomorrow. But life doesn't work that way. The oak tree doesn't become mighty overnight. The river doesn't carve through rock overnight. The sunrise doesn't appear instantly. Everything meaningful grows slowly. And that's where people quit, because growth is invisible before it becomes obvious. For months, it looks like nothing is happening. For years, it looks like nobody notices. For a long time, it feels like your efforts don't matter. Then one day, everything compounds, everything multiplies, everything accelerates. And people call it luck. No, it wasn't luck. It was years of invisible preparation, years of discipline when nobody was watching, years of choosing growth over comfort, years of planting seeds. Let me tell you a story. A man decides to improve his life. Nothing dramatic. He starts reading 10 pages a day. Just 10. Most people would laugh at that. 10 pages? That's nothing. But 10 pages every day becomes over 3,000 pages a year. That's dozens of books, new ideas, new skills, new perspectives, new possibilities. 5 years later, he has consumed knowledge most people never will. Not because he was smarter, because he was consistent. The compound effect is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Tiny actions, repeated daily, creating massive outcomes. And the same principle works in reverse. One extra hour of mindless distraction every day. One unhealthy habit every day. One excuse every day. One missed opportunity every day. It doesn't seem dangerous until years pass, and suddenly life presents the bill. You see, success compounds. Failure also compounds. That's why designing your future is not optional. It's necessary. Because if you don't decide where you're going, something else will decide for you. Circumstances will decide. Other people's opinions will decide. Your fears will decide. Your habits will decide. Your environment will decide. And here's the tragedy. Many people spend their entire lives reacting to problems, reacting to circumstances, reacting to emergencies, reacting to life. Instead of creating life, they become passengers instead of pilots, spectators instead of architects, followers instead of leaders. And then they wonder why they feel powerless. Think about the greatest builders in history. Before there was ever a building, there was a blueprint. Before there was ever a bridge, there was a blueprint. Before there was ever a masterpiece, there was a vision. Nobody accidentally builds something extraordinary. Everything great is created twice. First in the mind, then in reality. The future you want must first exist in your imagination. You have to see it before you can touch it. You have to believe it before you can build it. You have to picture it before you can live it. That is why vision is so powerful. Vision gives pain a purpose. Vision gives sacrifice meaning. Vision gives discipline energy. Without vision, every obstacle feels unbearable. With vision, obstacles become part of the journey. Here's what most people don't understand. Motivation is not enough. Motivation comes and goes. Motivation changes with weather. Motivation changes with mood. Motivation changes with circumstances. What changes lives is commitment. Commitment says, I will continue even when I don't feel like it. Commitment says, I will show up even when nobody applauds. Commitment says, I will keep moving even when progress feels slow. Because commitment understands something motivation never will. The person who wins is usually not the most talented. The person who wins is the one who stays in the game. Long enough, strong enough, consistent enough, patent enough. I want you to think about a farmer. A farmer plants seeds. The next morning he doesn't run outside screaming, "Where is my harvest?" He understands seasons. He understands process. He understands growth. Yet many people expect immediate rewards from personal development. They exercise for a week and quit. Ride for a month and quit. Work on a business for a few months and quit because they don't see results. But success has seasons. Growth has seasons. Transformation has seasons. And every season requires patience. You cannot rush greatness. You cannot rush mastery. You cannot rush becoming. The person you will be 5 years from now depends largely on two things: the books you read and the people you spend time with. Think about that. Ideas shape beliefs. Beliefs shape decisions. Decisions shape actions. Acts shape results. Results shape life. Everything begins with ideas. That's why protecting your mind is so important. Some people are extremely careful about what they eat, but completely careless about what they feed their minds. Negative conversations, negative media, negative influences, negative expectations, day after day, year after year, and then they wonder why their future feels dark. The mind is a garden. Whatever you plant grows. Whatever you water expands. Whatever you ignore eventually dies. If you plant fear, you harvest hesitation. If you plant excuses, you harvest mediocrity. If you plant discipline, you harvest freedom. If you plant growth, you harvest opportunity. And here's something that changed my life. Your current life is not your final life. Where you are today is not where you must remain. Your circumstances may describe you, but they do not define you. Your past may explain you, but it does not imprison you. Your mistakes may teach you, but they do not own you. So many people carry old identities. They keep introducing themselves to life through yesterday's failures. I've always been this way. I've never been confident. I'm not talented. I'm not lucky. I'm not capable. And those beliefs become invisible prisons. The strongest chains are rarely physical. They're mental. The moment you change what you believe about yourself, you begin changing what is possible for yourself, because human beings often act in alignment with their identity. If you see yourself as disciplined, you act differently. If you see yourself as capable, you act differently. If you see yourself as a creator instead of a victim, everything changes. Let me tell you something powerful. Every extraordinary life was once an ordinary life that made an extraordinary decision, a decision to stop drifting, a decision to stop settling, a decision to stop waiting, a decision to stop blaming, a decision to stop living by default and start living by design. Because life has a question for every one of us. Not once, every day. The question is simple. Will you design your future? Or will you surrender it? Will you choose direction or drift? Will you choose growth or comfort? Will you choose purpose or convenience? And every day your actions answer that question, not your words, not your intentions, not your dreams. Your actions, your daily habits are casting votes for the person you are becoming every morning, every evening, every decision, every routine. You are voting. The future is watching. The future is being built. The future is arriving one day at a time. And if you truly understood how powerful your daily choices are, you would begin treating ordinary days differently. Because ordinary days create extraordinary lives. The miracle is not in one massive breakthrough. The miracle is in the daily process, the daily reading, the daily learning, the daily discipline, the daily courage, the daily improvement. And when enough ordinary days stack together, something remarkable happens. A new identity emerges, a stronger person emerges, a wiser person emerges, a more capable person emerges. And suddenly opportunities begin appearing that once seemed impossible. Not because the world changed, because you changed. And once you change, you begin seeing things differently. You begin noticing possibilities other people miss. You begin recognizing opportunities others ignore. You begin developing confidence others wish they had. Because confidence is not something you get. Confidence is something you build. One promise kept to yourself at a time. Every time you do what you said you would do, you strengthen trust in yourself. Every time you break your word to yourself, you weaken it. That's why discipline is really self-respect in action. When you wake up early to work toward your dream, you're telling yourself something. When you learn a new skill, you're telling yourself something. When you refuse to quit, you're telling yourself something. You're saying, my future matters. And when a person truly believes their future matters, they begin making different choices. They begin walking differently, thinking differently, speaking differently, planning differently, because they understand that the next chapter of their life is not something waiting to happen. It is something waiting to be created. And the moment that realization becomes real in your heart, you stop asking, what will happen to me? And you start asking, what am I going to build next? Here's what most people don't realize. The future is always whispering to you before it arrives. It whispers through your habits. It whispers through your standards. It whispers through the things you tolerate. It whispers through the promises you keep and the promises you break. And if you learn how to listen carefully, you can almost predict where a person's life is heading. Not because you're psychic, because patterns leave clues. A man says he wants success, but he refuses to learn. The future is already whispering. A woman says she wants confidence, but she constantly abandons commitments to herself. The future is already whispering. Someone says they want a different life, but every day they repeat the same actions. The future is already whispering. And the reason this matters is because outcomes are rarely surprises. Most outcomes are the natural result of patterns. Think about this for a moment. A tree does not wake up one morning and suddenly become crooked. It bends little by little, day by day, year by year. The same thing happens with human beings. People don't suddenly arrive at greatness. They grow toward it. People don't suddenly arrive at regret. They drift toward it. Everything is happening gradually. And because it happens gradually, most people don't notice it. That's why years can disappear. You blink. 1 year is gone. You blink again. 5 years are gone. You blink again. A decade has vanished. And suddenly people find themselves asking painful questions. Where did the time go? Why am I still here? Why haven't things changed? Why do I feel stuck? But here's the difficult truth. Time changes nothing by itself. Time only magnifies what already exists. If you improve every year, time becomes your ally. If you drift every year, time becomes your enemy. The clock treats everyone equally. The difference is what people do while the clock is moving. I remember hearing a story about a man who worked the same job for 20 years. Every day he complained. Every day he dreamed of something better. Every day he talked about what he wanted. But he never prepared for what he wanted. Never learned new skills. Never read new books. Never developed himself. Never changed his habits. Then one day he woke up older. And the dream that once felt possible suddenly felt distant. Not because life attacked him. Because he spent years waiting for change instead of becoming change. And waiting is one of the most dangerous habits in the world. People wait for confidence. People wait for inspiration. People wait for the perfect opportunity. People wait for certainty. People wait for motivation. People wait for tomorrow. And while they're waiting, life keeps moving. The years keep moving. The opportunities keep moving. The seasons keep moving. Let me tell you something that transformed the way I think. You do not become confident before you act. You become confident because you act. Confidence is a result, not a requirement. Courage comes first. Action comes first. Growth comes first. Then confidence follows. A child learns the subject by falling, not by studying balance for 10 years. An entrepreneur learns by trying. A speaker learns by speaking. A leader learns by leading. Life rewards movement. And yet fear convinces people to stand still. Fear whispers, what if you fail? But there is another question fear never asks. What if you succeed? What if the opportunity you're avoiding changes your life? What if the skill you're delaying becomes your breakthrough? What if the conversation you're afraid to have opens a new door? What if the discipline you're resisting creates the future you've been praying for? Here's what most people don't understand about fear. Fear grows in darkness. Fear grows in uncertainty. Fear grows when action disappears. Action is often the cure. The moment you move forward, fear begins shrinking. The moment you take responsibility, fear begins losing power. The moment you stop running, fear begins fading. I learned something years ago from a mentor. He said, the greatest form of self-respect is keeping promises to yourself. Think about that. Not promises to your boss, not promises to your family, not promises to society, promises to yourself. Because every time you tell yourself you're going to do something, and then you don't do it, a little piece of trust disappears. And trust is everything. If you cannot trust yourself, how can you build a powerful future? How can you build confidence? How can you build discipline? How can you build belief? The strongest people are not always the smartest people. Often they're simply the people who learned how to trust themselves. They know that when they make a commitment, they follow through. And that creates an incredible force. A force that cannot be measured on paper. Because once a human being develops self-trust, they become dangerous to mediocrity. They stop negotiating with excuses. They stop negotiating with comfort. They stop negotiating with procrastination. They begin operating from a completely different standard. And standards determine destiny, not wishes, not intentions. Standards. You don't get what you want. You often get what you're willing to accept. Think about relationships. Think about health. Think about finances. Think about personal growth. Think about every area of life. Your standards are creating your reality. If your standards rise, your life rises. If your standards fall, your life falls. And this is why designing your future starts with designing yourself. Because the world outside is often a reflection of the world inside. A person filled with excuses sees obstacles everywhere. A person filled with possibilities sees opportunities everywhere. The environment may be the same. The mindset is different. Let me tell you a story. There were two young men who grew up in the same difficult neighborhood. Both experienced hardship. Both faced struggles. Both had reasons to quit. Years later, one became successful, fulfilled, respected. The other remained trapped in the same cycle. Someone asked the successful man, "How did you become who you are?" He answered, "Because of where I came from." Then they asked the other man, "Why did you become who you are?" He answered, "Because of where I came from." The same circumstances, two different interpretations. One used pain as fuel. The other used pain as an excuse. And that lesson changed me forever. Your experiences do not automatically determine your future. Your response to your experiences determines your future. Pain can destroy you, or pain can develop you. Failure can stop you, or failure can educate you. Criticism can weaken you, or criticism can strengthen you. Everything depends on what meaning you assign to it. Because human beings are meaning-making creatures. We constantly interpret events, and those interpretations become beliefs. Those beliefs become identities. Those identities become destinies. That's why one of the most important skills in life is learning how to reframe challenges. A setback is not always a setback. Sometimes it's training. Sometimes it's preparation. Sometimes it's redirection. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes life is teaching you lessons that success could never teach. The strongest people often emerge from the hardest seasons. Not because suffering is magical, but because adversity forces growth. Adversity forces adaptation. Adversity reveals character. You discover who you really are when life becomes difficult. Anybody can feel positive when everything is easy. Anybody can feel motivated when results are coming quickly. Anybody can believe when life is comfortable. But what about when progress is invisible? What about when nobody supports you? What about when setbacks keep appearing? What about when you're tired? What about when doubt shows up? That is where futures are truly built. Not during comfort, during challenge. Because challenge reveals commitment, and commitment reveals character, and character ultimately determines destiny. Here's what most people don't see. The person they admire today probably spent years being ignored, years being doubted, years being underestimated, years doing the work nobody celebrated. The world usually notices success at the end. But transformation happens long before the applause, long before recognition, long before the rewards successes is often lonely before it becomes visible. That's why vision matters so much. Vision allows you to continue when evidence is missing. Vision allows you to keep planting when harvest hasn't arrived. Vision allows you to remain faithful to the process when results are still hidden beneath the surface. Because every meaningful dream requires a season where nothing seems to be happening. And that season tests everything. It tests your patience. It tests your faith. It tests your discipline. It tests your identity. It asks a simple question. Will you continue without immediate rewards? Most people answer no. That's why most people quit. But the extraordinary answer differently. They understand that becoming is more important than arriving. They understand that growth itself is the reward. They understand that every disciplined day is changing them in ways they cannot yet see. And eventually something remarkable begins to happen. The things that once felt difficult become normal. The habits that once required effort become automatic. The discipline that once felt painful becomes part of your identity. And when that shift happens, your future begins accelerating in ways that seem impossible to people who only see the surface. Because they see the results, but they never saw the mornings. They never saw the sacrifices. They never saw the lonely hours. They never saw the internal battles. They never saw the moments when you wanted to quit and chose not to. And that reminds me of something a mentor once told me. He said, most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can become in 10. I want you to really hear that, not what they can earn, not what they can achieve, what they can become, because becoming is the real game. Money can disappear. Titles can disappear. Recognition can disappear. But the person you become stays with you. The discipline stays. The wisdom stays. The character stays. The mindset stays. And once those things are built, they begin creating opportunities over and over again. That's why when life knocks someone down, some people rise again and others don't. The difference is often invisible. It's the person they became before the challenge arrived, because storms reveal foundations. And every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are building a foundation beneath your future, brick by brick, choice by choice, habit by habit, thought by thought. And one day, life will test that foundation. And when that day comes, you'll discover whether you've been building with intention or simply hoping everything would somehow work out. Because hope without action has never built a great life, and the people who create extraordinary futures understand that every sunrise arrives carrying a question that most people never hear. A question that asks quietly but relentlessly, what will you do with today that your future self will thank you for? And the answer to that question begins shaping everything that comes next. For a moment, I want you to imagine yourself standing at the end of your life. Not tomorrow, not next year. At the very end, the noise is gone, the excuses are gone, the distractions are gone, and all that remains is one question. What did I do with the life I was given? Think about that, because one day, every single one of us will have to answer it, not with words, with our lives. And in that moment, you will not care about the days you were comfortable. You will not care about the days you played it safe. You will not care about the opinions that once terrified you. You will care about the chances you took. The person you became, the courage you showed, the dreams you pursued, the lives you touched, the legacy you left behind. You see, the greatest pain in life is not failure. The greatest pain in life is regret. It is looking back and realizing you could have become more. You could have learned more. You could have loved more. You could have given more. You could have lived more. But you waited. And the years slipped away. Let me tell you something from the depths of my heart. You are not here by accident. There is something inside you that the world has not yet seen. There is strength inside you that has not yet been tested. There is greatness inside you that has not yet been developed. There is a future inside you that is waiting to be built. But it will not happen by chance. It will happen by choice. The choice to rise when it's easier to sleep. The choice to continue when it's easier to quit. The choice to believe when doubt is screaming. The choice to stay disciplined when nobody is watching. Because every day you delay your growth, you are delaying the life that could have been yours. Every day you postpone your purpose, you are postponing your destiny. Every day you surrender to excuses, you hand your future over to circumstances. And circumstances have never built a remarkable life. Vision builds it, discipline builds it, character builds it, consistency builds it, day by day, step by step, choice by choice. Listen to me carefully. Your future is not coming. Your future is being created right now, in this moment, with this decision, with this thought, with this action. The person you will become 5 years from now is watching you today. The person you could become is waiting for you to act, waiting for you to stop doubting, waiting for you to stop hesitating, waiting for you to stop living beneath your potential. And maybe this is the moment. Maybe this is the day you stop negotiating with your dreams. Maybe this is the day you stop asking life to change and start changing yourself. Maybe this is the day you decide that your future deserves more than your excuses, more than your fear, more than your procrastination, more than your comfort, because comfort has never created greatness. Comfort has never built empires. Comfort has never changed the world. Growth lives beyond comfort. Purpose lives beyond comfort. Destiny lives beyond comfort. And every extraordinary person who has ever walked this earth eventually reached a moment where they had to make a decision between the life they had and the life they were capable of creating. That moment is here, that moment is now, not next Monday, not next month, not next year. now. Because the clock is moving, the years are moving, life is moving. And whether you choose it or not, your future is being written. So write a story worth reading. Build a life worth remembering. Become a person worth admiring. Stand up tomorrow with a different standard. Walk with a different level of intention. Protect your vision. Honor your commitments. Keep your promises. Trust the process. Stay faithful to the work. And when life becomes difficult, and it will, remember this. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. Years from now, let your future self look back with gratitude. Let them say, I didn't quit. I didn't surrender. I didn't let circumstances decide my life. I chose growth. I chose purpose. I chose discipline. I chose to become who I was meant to be. Because in the end, your destiny is not found. It is built. Your future is not discovered. It is designed. And the most powerful thing about your life is that beginning today, beginning right now, the pen is still in your hands.